All right, real talk. Cycle time can make or break your production. If your parts are taking longer than they should, you're basically leaving money on the table. But what if you could fix that before even cutting steel? With simulation, we can actually see what's going on inside the mold, like how the plastic flows, where it cools too slow, and what's dragging your cycle time down. And the best part, you can tweak it, test it, and optimize everything without wasting time on trial and error. I'm Alex Baker, and today we'll be looking at cycle time optimization and what tools are available in Moldex3D to help you optimize your process. We have three instances of optimizations that we can make in the molding cycle. That would be the filling time, the packing time, and the cooling time. There's also some optimizations to be made infrastructurally when the mold is open. However, when we talk about the simulation results, the filling, packing, and cooling are where we're going to focus our efforts. In the filling stage, this is the lowest percentage of the cycle time pie. And so here, we're actually not necessarily trying to reduce the cycle time, but we're trying to optimize our filling time to give us the best balance between shear and cooling dominated effects. You can watch the video here to get a more detailed breakdown about what each of these effects are, but I'm going to go over them here briefly. To evaluate shear dominated versus cooling dominated flow, I'm going to go to the temperature result. And here, what I'm trying to evaluate is how the temperature of the material is changing as it flows along the length of the part. If the temperature increases over the length of the part, that indicates to me that the shear effect actually dominated the cooling effect. The shear effect is a friction-based effect as the material flows and rubs against the frozen layer that will generate heat and will cause the material temperature to increase. However, there's a combating effect. The energy induced in heating the material is gradually dissipated out into the cooling system, and that energy dissipation effect should cause the temperature of the material to decrease over the length of flow. So which of those is more dominant will present itself in the temperature result of the filling stage. I'm going to go to result, and then I'll use a slicing grid, which again we go over in that video that I just mentioned. And this slicing grid can allow us to evaluate where the hottest material is in our part. Is it at the end of flow or is it at the gate? I'll reduce my scale by increasing the minimum to get a feel for where that hottest material is located. And in this case, it actually looks like the hottest material is around our gate location, indicating that the cooling effect is dominant. The ideal scenario would have the temperature being completely uniform throughout our geometry. And so if I wanted to balance this effect, if I wanted to shift more towards the shear heating effect, since I'm cooling dominator right now, I would actually want to make my material flow faster through my cavity, and therefore I would decrease my filling time. This isn't always a reduction of the cycle time necessarily, but more of an optimization. And here's actually a situation where the temperature is actually hotter at the end of fill. And in this case, I would actually want to increase my filling time to slow down the material and decrease the shear effect. The next section is the packing stage. And in the packing stage, we're trying to evaluate the packing effect. And so from the simulation side, we want to figure out where the molten material is in our geometry and how much packing is actually being applied from our gate location as time progresses. The first result we can go to is the molten core result. The molten core will show us where the molten material is in our geometry, the blue material here representing material above the freeze temperature. And so what I want to see here is a couple of things. The first one is to make sure that my gate is open. If there's a disconnection between the molten material and the gate and the molten material in the part, then that means that our gate is frozen off. And so any additional packing time that we apply doesn't actually contribute to any effective packing throughout our geometry. The other thing I want to evaluate is how distributed this packing effect actually is at this moment in time. We can see here that the packing is quite concentrated around the gate region because that's where the molten material is located. But you can actually see that there's still molten material at the end of flow that is not accessed by the gate location. And the reason for that is that, well, this intermediate region freezes off before the molten material coming out of the gate and the hottest material at the end of fill is frozen off. And so this molten material at the end of fill is actually isolated off from the gate location and might actually be underpacked in this scenario. Another way that we can evaluate this is by looking at how much material this packing effect is contributing to the total part weight. In reality, This is usually how we're running the mold trial to figure out when to stop the packing. We'll run multiple different parts at different packing times to see when the part weight stops meaningfully increasing. We can actually do the same thing in simulation. I can go to XY curve and part weight, and we can use this information to figure out when the part weight stops increasing. Now, this part's a little bit subjective because the definition of a meaningful part weight increase is sort of dependent on the material that we're using, the part geometry, and the application itself. In the XY plot's current state, we can see that the filling stage dominates a large portion of the y-axis, so I can actually change the y-axis extents to hone in on this part weight increase to the packing stage. So I'll change this to 145 grams. And I can also decrease the maximum here to, let's say, 160, just to open up that slope a little bit better. All right, so here we can start to figure out when that packing effectiveness begins to taper off. Again, this is a little bit subjective, but might be able to say somewhere around the 10-second to 12-second mark is when that effective packing halts. After the end of packing, which is where the dotted line is here, we can actually see that the part weight decreases a bit, and that's because the material is actually still molten at this moment in time, and therefore the packing that we're applying into the part is actually retracting and going back through the melt entrance. If the gate is not sealed off, then you will see this small decrease in the part weight in the XY plot here. In this case, I could either elect to decrease my packing time, or I could actually elect to decrease my packing pressure over time so that I can reduce the pressure that I'm applying as the material begins to freeze off through my geometry. If I continue to apply a really high pressure to a low volume of material, I might get an overpacking effect, and so decreasing that pressure can reduce the possibility of an overpacking scenario, and it can also help in distributing that pressure more uniformly, allowing the part to shrink at a uniform rate. The last stage that we'll look at here is the cooling stage, and the result item that we're going to be looking at here is the time to reach ejection temperature. Time to reach ejection temperature represents how long it takes to get from whatever temperature state we were at the end of packing down to the ejection temperature. Now, if I go over into my information tree, we can find the ejection temperature over in my process conditions. In this case, the ejection temperature is quite a bit lower than the freeze temperature. So that's a very important note that this is not indicating when the material is frozen, but rather when it is solidified so that it can be ejected from the mold. When the material freezes, it's still sort of malleable, and the surface can be deformed if an ejector pin puts a large amount of force on it. So we want to make sure that we're down to the ejection temperature before we actually eject the part in the regions where the ejector pins are pushing the part out of the mold. Now, if I look at the surface of my part, we can actually see that the value of time to reach ejection temperature is quite low. And the reason for that is because the surface gets down to the ejection temperature much, much quicker than the core or the middle of our geometry. But actually, the core of our geometry is where we're going to be focusing our efforts. And so instead of just looking at the surface result, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper and I'm going to look at the isosurface, which will allow me to identify what areas are getting down to the ejection temperature at different moments in time. And speaking of time, that's the scale that we're working with over here on the right side. We have seconds. 0 seconds is the end of packing. And so what we're representing here is 48 seconds after the end of packing. This material that we see is still above the ejection temperature. So we can use this isosurface result to really just play through the cooling stage and figure out when the part is sufficiently cooled down. Now, at this moment in time, we have one thick region on our part that is still above the ejection temperature, and the material in our gate is still above the ejection temperature, and that's actually fine. When we eject the part, these areas will continue to cool outside of the mold, and as long as they don't interact with our ejection system, then we don't necessarily have to continue cooling them inside of the mold. All right, so I can take my slider to the left until gradually other features start to show up. Again, these features can continue to cool outside of the mold, and so I'll continue decreasing my cooling time until eventually some nominal region on my part starts to show up. And so we can see that this sidewall over here starts to show up, as well as this area over on the right side. And so as these nominal regions start to show up, that's usually where I cut off the cooling time. And so in this case, I would say that my effective cooling time might be somewhere around 40 seconds for this part geometry and this process condition set. The cooling time is where we can save the most amount of our cycle, and even a couple of seconds in our cycle can mean a long-term benefit over millions of cycles in the long run and over the life of the mold. So these optimizations that we can make to our cycle time can benefit our parts dimensional stability, optimize our cycle time, and increase the productivity across the board. Thank you for watching this Moldex3D advanced tips and tricks. If you have any topics that you'd like to see discussed in the future, you can leave those in the comments below. You can leave a like on your way out and subscribe to the Moldex3D North America YouTube channel to get notified of when videos like this get posted in the future. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.